To have with us to talk about Hinduism and other religious faiths in India, the professor from Tennessee State University, Dr. JParuchuri. And of course, Dr. Paruchuri will give us some information in reference to her background and other important information. Then we'll get into a discussion in dealing with various religious faiths in India with a focus on Hinduism. And of course, Dr. Paruchuri, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
I'm very glad to be here, Dr. Haney.
And to tell you how delighted we are to have you here, Dr. Paruchuri. As a matter of fact, we're reminded that a long, long time ago, we had you and another professor, Dr. H. Leon Prather, talking about political science and other developments in the Department of History at Tennessee State University. And now you're back with us again, and we're simply delighted to have you. Dr. Paruchuri, what we'd like to do today is to talk about various religious faiths in India, but to start off by having you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in leading you to eventually to Tennessee State University, where you've been for the last number of years.
Well, I must say that I have a very interesting background. I was born during British colonial era. Of course, by the time the British left, probably I must have been 5 or 6 years old. And almost all of my education was in India. And no sooner I finished my education, I taught at a college in India. And then I got married. And my husband was already here, and I accompanied him as his wife. And when I arrived in this country, I was offered a job where I was, when he got a job in Wisconsin at the same place, I was offered a job to teach. As you know, I'm a political scientist, and so I was very delighted that I was offered this opportunity to teach. And after a couple of years, my husband came as a visiting professor to Tennessee State University, and there was a vacancy in the political science department, and they offered me the job. And so I stayed at TSU, and most of the time I tell people that it seemed like I was born in India but reborn in America, and born in India looking at TSU in particular. And I came to TSU almost while this era of civil rights were ending. So there seemed to be a new beginning in the South, but Nashville was still a very small city. And people like me who were from a very distant land, they could not relate. The only country from outside of United States which was constantly in the news was at that time Vietnam. So geographically most people could not place many of these countries at that time, and they thought probably India is very close to Vietnam, which is not the case. So anyhow, I used to be invited to many schools and a variety of organizations to speak about India, and I was very delighted to make people familiar with the Indian culture and the general background about India, etc. And many times they would ask me, are you going back? My response sometimes, you know, with some amusement, I would say, you came by Mayflower, I came by jet. So I don't know if I will return.
You're just as comfortable here as anybody else.
Exactly. The advantage probably for me as against many others who come to this country is that I was already very fluent in English, and for that we have to thank the British. And now, of course, there are many internationals in Nashville. I believe 1 in 6 is foreign born. So I'm amazed at the change in Nashville. When we drive around, you have many different kinds of groceries from you know, variety of countries, and you also see many internationals. So it seems like Nashville has changed a great deal.
Nashville has evolved since you've been here.
Yes, absolutely evolved. It seems like, looking back, Nashville was a very small village. Now we have become global, and so which is a good thing, because world is changing. Along with that, people have to change, relate to other countries, other cultures. So I'm glad you have invited me to speak about religions in India. The more familiar you are with a country, the less threatened we feel.
Very good. And of course, Dr. Paruchuri, that's exactly what we wanted to accomplish today, to deal with a variety of religious groups, and I think we've done so far on this particular show, and that's why we wanted to talk about Hinduism and some of the other religious faiths in the country of India, and we're certainly delighted that you've decided to join us in reference to this. And what we'll do, we'll take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll let you say something about the people of India, about the culture, and et cetera, during these next 8 or 9 minutes, and then we'll be able to talk about Hinduism. Of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. We're talking to Dr. Paruchuri.